and welcome back to another episode of Healing Visionaries online show. I'm your host, Cailin O'Connor, and today we have with us Mkali Hashiki. I must tell you more about her background before we start talking with her. Mkali Hashiki is an erotic empowerment consultant, simultaneously inhabiting the roles of pleasure priestess, passion griot, and transcendence tutor. Her divine purpose is helping folks access their body's wisdom in order to heal their erotic wounds so they can open themselves to joy on every level. She offers group intensives, rituals, individual sessions, instructional videos, guided visualizations, as well as private events for companies and organizations. Her politics, spirituality, and lived experience as a queer, feminist, polyamorous, middle-aged, fat, kinky, black femme dyke trauma survivor inform all aspects of her work. For more information, we'll have her website on the video. Welcome.
Thank
Mkali.
you.
It's so great to have you on here today. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So to get us started off, how what are some of your politics and your background story and your involvement in this work?
Well, that's a very long answer, but I will say that I believe that individual liberation and collective liberation are intertwined, so that it starts on an individual level, but it has to ripple out in order to affect everyone. So that, I joke sometimes that my work is about the world's liberation one butthole at a time. So it's definitely that when we're connected with our bodies, when we are genuinely and authentically connected with our bodies, when we understand those bodies as sacred instruments, then we, by default, also will understand other bodies as sacred instruments. And when we understand that all bodies are sacred instruments, it becomes, more challenging, if not impossible, to further harass, demean, dehumanize, starve, kill, mutilate those other bodies. And that means that we also then understand the body, that the earth is a body, and it becomes more challenging, if not impossible, to also destroy the earth. So it's all interconnected.
I love it. That's really important work. And today we're talking especially focused on breath work and energy work. So you're able to use these techniques to help bring that awareness, that liberation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I say is that the breath is an anchor and a vehicle and a springboard. So the breath helps to keep us grounded in our bodies, grounded in this physical form, which can be challenging for folks who are trauma survivors and folks who live in bodies that are multiply marginalized by the state. It can be challenging to be fully grounded in the body, because being fully grounded in the body is not always a safe place to be. So the breath helps to anchor us in the body. The breath also helps to move energy around the body. That's the vehicle part. And in the particular breathwork techniques that I teach, the breath is also a springboard into whatever experience you're seeking, whatever reason that you're using these techniques for. One of the breaths is the one that catapults you to that state.
Right, that's the one we were talking about last time, because there are several ways to do it, but in the end, we're all going to that same place where you're really able to reach some difficult trauma areas and get them out, release them.
And also to be able to reach spots of joy. It's not always about using the breath to go to some place that's uncomfortable or challenging for you. You can also use the breath to achieve moments of peace and joy and bliss.
Absolutely. Right. Well, what were you going to say about this connection you mentioned last time, Liberation Collective toward global justice?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, a movement that you were talking about really as a big picture objective in the Liberation Collective toward a global justice.
Yes. So I think that, as I was saying, once people understand their own bodies as sacred instruments, then this knowledge comes, and not in an intellectual sense, but in a felt somatic sense, that we're all connected and that all bodies are connected. If my body is sacred, that means your body is sacred. And so I can't, um, I can't condone any sort of violence against your body the same way that I can't condone any sort of violence against my body. I mean, I think it's an ongoing, it's not something that happens immediately. It takes some time. And also, I think people who are empowered and understand the power of their erotic energy, people who are erotically empowered are harder to vanquish, basically. Being in touch with our erotic energy gives us a source of power that we can fall back on, gives us a place that we can go for replenishment and rejuvenation. And, when you are more joyful, you're not likely to put up with crap.
Right.
Because it takes away from your joy.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the ways that you help lead people into that space, into, being in the body?
It depends. I almost always use the breath as the starting point. I teach erotic breath work mostly in group form. So I do some in-person events, and then I do a webinar. And I also, go around to different conferences and teach it. I'm going to be at Sex Down South in September doing a workshop on erotic breathwork. But I also, do individual sessions. And generally, we start with the breath because a lot of our issues around our sexuality or around our connection with eros, our connection with our erotic energy, are exacerbated by us not being able to fully breathe. So using the breath to stay anchored in the body, using the breath to quiet the mind, because a lot of times also some of our issues are, we tell ourselves stories that aren't true about our bodies, about our worth as human beings based on our bodies. And it's not that we deliberately want to lie to ourselves, that sometimes our brains we can't help but take in the messages that we are bombarded with about our bodies and about what that means as far as our value as human beings, especially for folks who live in bodies that are marginalized or multiply marginalized by the state. There's messages around whether those bodies hold value, and then we start to believe that. And so using the breath to shut that mind up so that the body itself, the wisdom that's stored in the body, can be heard and felt and experienced.
Wow, right. It's such a big deal to have that ability to connect with the body, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're not in, that we are living most of the time outwardly. I'm really curious what you mean by, what is a passion griot? I was asking you before, but I'd love for everyone to know.
So griot is a role that exists in some West African communities and traditions, and it's the historian, the storyteller, the person who shares wisdom with the people, sort of couched in stories. And so I help people to reframe their understanding of their body and reframe their understanding of their connection to the divine through the stories that I tell. And by story, I don't mean, like I made some fiction up. But there's stories that I tell oftentimes about my own personal journey, or my connection with my body. And through that, it's sort of like a mirror that people can look into to see and reframe and understand in a different way their connection with their own body. And also, I tell stories to help people expand their understanding of the erotic. Because I think a lot of folks think that the erotic is interchangeable with the sexual, and it's not. It's related, but it's different. And so helping people to understand the great breadth of what the erotic actually is and why it's important in our lives. And I do that through storytelling.
Uh-huh. Can you talk a little bit more about those differences?
The differences between the erotic and the sexual? Yes. So I usually talk about them in three. The differences between the erotic, the sexual, and the sensual. And I define the sensual as that which is pleasing to or stimulation of any of the five senses, and that the sexual is stimulation of or pleasing to any of the erogenous zones and or the genitalia, with a goal of either connection, communication, or orgasm, or more than one. And that the erotic is that which is pleasing to or stimulation of the soul. So the way that they're related is that the sensual and the sexual are the most direct and the most embodied routes to the soul. And I think it's important to differentiate between the three, because when we get them tangled up, we might have a need for sensual touch. We may have a hunger for the sensual, and we think that the only way to fill that need is by having sex, and then maybe the sex doesn't actually fulfill that need because it wasn't a sexual need, it was a sensual. Generally speaking, it's often folks confusing the sexual and the erotic, so that they have this need to stimulate their soul. They have this hunger for soul connection, and they think it's sexual, and so then they have sex, and the sex, even if you have orgasms and it's pleasing to the body, it still is unsatisfying, because what you actually had was a need to stimulate or please your soul.
Right.
And I think that's especially true for folks who are socialized as female in our society, that it becomes more challenging to separate the erotic and the sexual, and we often have sex that is not fulfilling for that reason.
Absolutely. True. What's some of your training? How did you come into this area of work? How did you prepare?
So I am, well, technically, according to the state of California, I am no longer a certified massage therapist, but I was a certified massage therapist through the Body Electric School, which was started by Joseph Kramer in the 80s. So I have a CMT. I'm also a certified sexological body worker, which is done through, it was at the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, and also a course that was created by Joseph Kramer, but had the approval of the state of California. And I am also a certified sound, voice, and music healer, as well as a certified tantric sacred intimate. So all of those, except for the last, are certifications that come through the state of California. But the sacred intimacy, the tantric sacred intimacy training was something different. And I did that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, whereas I did the first 3 maybe like 10 years ago.
Wow, right. And now you're actually in Bolivia.
I'm in Belize.
Oh, Belize. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this video. So you're also traveling and moving around a bunch. Are you working with anybody in Belize?
No, I am not working with people in Belize. When I come back, I'll be back in the fall. When I come back, I'll be doing some in-person events. I haven't done anything this stint. And when I was here before earlier this year, I did a little free event where I did a little bit of breath work at an art center. But I am still working with people remotely, you know, over the internet, but not working with folks in Belize. Primarily, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is I don't have a space to do that. Two, you know, I don't have a work permit to see people here in Belize. And thirdly, there's a big difference in, you know, the economy of Belize. And so folks here, you know, I'd have to change my rates. So basically what I'm doing is subsidizing the work I do in group situations here in Belize, but I don't actually charge for it.
Nice. Yeah. And today you were going to lead us on a short exercise to experience some of what you're talking about. How long do we need for that? I just want to be mindful of the time.
I don't, let's see, I'm trying to figure out if I can have my clock and be able to see what, I got messed up. I
We have about,
how many minutes do we have?
we have about 15 minutes.
Okay, I can do this probably in about, I'm gonna say it's 10 minutes.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna teach folks is a way of connecting their heart and their sacral chakra. I don't know what kind of experience folks who are watching this have with feeling, you know, being able to experience and direct energy through their body. So I'm gonna sort of start from the beginning with basics. So what I'm gonna have you do, if you're watching right now, is to go ahead and rub your palms together until they get really, really hot. And then you're just gonna slowly move your hands apart. Basically what we're doing right now is sort of jump starting the energy portals in the palms. So you're gonna keep moving them. Connection between the palms. For me, I usually feel it as if there's like a hook in my palms on an elastic band. So the
Oh, you broke up. You're breaking up.
to about your shoulder width.
Hang on. I have
switch.
I'm gonna pause. We lost you for a minute.
Oh, okay. Am I back?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So you're just pulling your palms apart, noticing what you feel between them. When you get to about shoulder width, you're gonna bring them slowly back together and notice what you feel between them. And for me, what I notice is it feels like I have like a slightly inflated, you know, like beach ball in between my hand. And so there's a little bit of resistance. And as I bring my hands closer, it sort of feels like when you have two magnets and you're trying to force the positive ends together, you know how as you get closer, it sort of, you know, like goes off, they won't meet. So I kind of feel that as I get closer. And again, you may feel it and experience it differently. And if you don't feel anything between your palms, that's totally fine too. We're just working on sort of waking and clearing up these energy portals in our palms. And then you notice like how close do your hands have to be before you feel the connection between your palms. For me, it's about face width. For you, it might be here, or you might not feel anything except for when you're right here. It's totally fine. So you're gonna let your palms go. And what I want you to remember is that the right palm gives energy and the left palm receives energy. So we're going to do two different breathing exercises. For the first one, I want you to take your right hand and you're going to cup your front genitalia. If your middle finger can touch your perineum, that's great. If it can't, don't worry about it. So get comfortable. Make sure that you're cupping your front genitalia in your palm. You don't want not the heel of your hand on your pubic mound, but a little bit lower. And then you're going to take your left palm and you're going to put it, you're going to put it on your sternum right there. So your right hand is cupping your front genitalia. Your left hand is on your sternum. So this is your heart chakra, your heart energy portal, and your sacral chakra, or the energy portal in your genitalia. And you're just going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, nice and effortlessly and relaxed. So. I'm going to check in with your jaw, make sure it's relaxed. If you need to yawn or wiggle it around, that's cool. You also want to check in with your butthole and see if it's relaxed. If it's clenched, you want to consciously clench it. And if you're unsure whether it's clenched, you want to consciously clench it and then consciously relax it. And then continue to just breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And I want you to imagine that your spine, instead of being towards the back of you, is sort of in the middle of you. Like it's the lollipop stick and your body is the lollipop. Not the flat lollipops that you get at the dentist, but sort of round lollipops, because you are a three-dimensional being. So when you inhale and your body expands, you want to expand not just to the front of you, but also to the side and even back behind you. So you expand on all directions on the inhale. And then contract back towards spine on the exhale. So an inhale and an exhale is one breath. You're going to take 5 breaths, and then you're slowly and gently going to take your hands away from your body and then switch their position so that your left hand is now cupping your right genitalia right in your palm, and your right hand is on your sternum. And just continue to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you can even imagine that there is a shaft of light connecting your palms. So the shaft of light goes through your body to connect your palms. And just notice, does the light move up on the inhale and down on the exhale? Or does it move down on the inhale and up on the exhale? There's no wrong answer for this. You're going to take 5 more breaths, remembering 1 breath equals an inhale and an exhale. And slowly take your hands away from your body and place them, wherever it feels normal and comfortable for you. Now, when I give that assignment, that exercise to my clients, you don't do both of them. You choose one. Either you do it with the right palm cupping the front genitalia and the left palm on the heart, or vice versa. But in the exercise, you don't switch.
Okay. So what
I
is
just want
it?
to give folks a chance to feel both ways.
Yeah, thank you. That was pretty cool. And I like that you pointed out which way is the energy running. Does it make a difference if it's started from one or the other?
No, doesn't make a difference. And it can be, it can get your head too much in it if I tell you to do it one way. So it's more like notice which way just sort of happens, right? For some people, it depends on the placement of the palm. So maybe it runs from right to left or from left to right. And for some people, it doesn't matter about the placement of the palms. It's always the light comes up from the genitals to the heart on the inhale and then moves back down on the exhale. And then for some people, it's the other way around. The energy always moves down on the inhale and then back up, or the light and energy moves down on the inhale and back up on the exhale. So you're just noticing, what works for your body.
Right. I love that. It helps us get connected.
Yeah, a lot of times there is a disconnection for a lot of folks between the upper energy centers and the lower energy centers. And also in a lot of sort of neo traditions, there's this idea that to be more spiritually focused, to be more spiritually advanced, you have to sort of ignore your sexuality, ignore the energy that's in your genitalia, and actually ignore the body. That it's about, spirituality is found in this state of exiting the body rather than finding your spiritual connection or finding your divinity the further inward you go, which is what I believe that it's about.
Right.
Turning inward, not getting out of the body. And it's
Absolutely.
really important for people to connect their erotic and or sexual energy with their spirituality. A lot of the wounds around our sexuality actually come from false notions that we get through organized religion and some religious traditions. So it's really important to understand that your sexuality, your eroticism is part of your body, and it's not, you don't lose out on yourself as a spiritual being because you like to have sex or because you experience physical pleasure. That experiencing physical pleasure is actually one way of prayer, one way of communicating with the divine.
Right. That's actually come up several times across the this show. The importance of being in your body and these divine ways of connecting, and that sexuality and the erotic side is definitely part of Buddhism that people often don't talk about. It's really in the hidden depths of studying Buddhism that you actually come to find this connection.
Well, it's interesting that actually in a lot of a more organized, more not organized, that's not the word I want, more culturally validated spiritual traditions, as including the big three, the Judaic, Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, as well as a lot of other culturally validated religious traditions like Buddhism. There is often a branch that deals with sort of mysticism and or the sacredness of the body and the sacredness of pleasure, but that gets ignored or cut off when most of the people who are sort of big names in those religions talk about that religion. So you don't often hear, uh, Christians talking about Christian mysticism or Christian sexuality. You don't often hear. Well, I don't know if that's true, but there is also, there's a Judaic mystic branch. There's a Muslim Islam mystic branch, and folks tend to forget that when they think about those religions.
What if you have a sexual dream in the spirit world, or with what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure. If you have a dream, the question is, if you're having a dream about sex, are you actually having that sex with someone in the spiritual world, or is it just a dream?
Well, I mean, if you're doing work in the spirit world and something sexual comes across in that space, and that unplanned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've had it happen a few times, and it's a bit confusing.
Confusing in what way?
Because I didn't think that was really part of it, but then I think it's also because maybe I needed to learn some lessons in that
Mm-hmm.
area,
especially about learning about the body and the ways in which the sexual and the sensual can really take us on a journey to come face to face with the divine, however we understand the divine. And that sometimes when, we're focused on developing our spiritual talents or strengthening our connection with the divine, we forget about our sexuality or the pleasures contained in our flesh, which really, in my mind, however you believe that bodies came to be, and whatever you believe around, a deity or deities or the wisdom of the universe that created the body that you live in, because you are not your body, you're temporarily inhabiting your body. So whatever divine being or beings created the body that you live in, they also gave you the ability to feel pleasure in this physical container. So if you decide, some other person tells you no, feeling pleasure, feeling good things in your physical container is turning away from this deity, to me, that's blasphemy. Like, why should I decide, or why should I listen to somebody else tell me that the being or beings that created my body and gave me the ability to feel pleasure, like they made a mistake somehow? No, like that is part and parcel of the gifts that they gave me. And so whenever I allow myself to feel pleasure, physical pleasure, emotional pleasure as well, but whenever, especially physical pleasure, whenever I engage in physical pleasure, it's a form of thanking the divine beings that gave me the ability to feel this pleasure. It's like it really is a form of worship.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it.
Reframing.
Yeah, and the gratitude piece, being appreciative that we do have this ability and this physical body.
Yeah. I think that the struggle for folks who talk about somatic pleasure and the spirituality of physical pleasure, and all the things that we can learn from the body, is we need to be really mindful that we're not going down some ableist path and somehow still placing different values on bodies that have different abilities, disabled bodies, you know, and not just seeing it as like, oh, you know, because you can move, therefore you have this connection to the divine, because some bodies can't move or move in a different way, and that doesn't mean that they don't have a connection with the divine. So it's just something to be mindful of as we think about what it means to experience physical pleasure and all the different ways that we can experience physical pleasure. So it's not that experiencing physical pleasure with their genitalia is somehow more important than physical pleasure in any other way. It's just that it should not be you know, seen as something dirty or wrong or profane. The pleasure that you feel in your genitalia is just as important as pleasure you feel in any other part of your body or with any other part of your body. And they're all ways to connect with the divine.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mkali Hashiki, this has been a really cool experience to talk with you today about this topic and the breath work and the erotic and sensual, and thank you. Is there anything else that we didn't, I mean, we only covered a little bit, but that you'd like to leave us with anything further on this?
I think there's a couple of things. I'm going to try to, you know, narrow it down. One, I really encourage folks to read The Uses of the Erotic. The Erotic is Power, with a few caveats and disclaimers. It was written about 40 years ago, and there's definitely some gender essentialism within the piece, and there's also some anti-porn sentiment within the piece. But it's a real reworking and reframing of what the erotic actually is. So there's that. And then also I want to say that one of the tenets that I use in my work is that the body is never wrong. It's just sometimes not in the same place on the space-time continuum as you are. So whatever you're experiencing in your body, the body is doing what it should. It just may think that you're at a different place than you actually are currently. And so once we recognize that the body's not doing something wrong, it's just filtering things in a different way, then it can be easier to move through whatever kind of obstacles to pleasure our body is putting in our path.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. It's been so great having you on the show, Mkali Hashiki. Thank you again.